Elvis Presley's death was never supposed to happen so soon. He was only 42, still young enough that fans believed he had years of music and performances ahead of him. This was the boy from Tupelo who had risen from poverty to become the single most recognizable figure in popular music. The man who turned rock and roll into a global force. To his fans, Elvis seemed untouchable, a larger-than-life figure whose voice, swagger, and magnetism made him appear immortal. But on the morning of August 16, 1977, that illusion collapsed. At his beloved Graceland estate in Memphis, Tennessee, Elvis was found unconscious, lying motionless in the bathroom. By the afternoon, he was declared dead, and the world entered a period of shock and mourning that remains etched in cultural memory. The official statement from authorities was straightforward. He had suffered a heart attack. But even as fans sobbed and radio stations broke into programming with the grim announcement, rumors began to circulate. Whispers of pill bottles scattered across countertops. Whispers of years of unchecked prescriptions. Whispers of a body pushed to its limits by fame and the pressures of being Elvis Presley. What would eventually come out, through leaks, testimonies, and hidden autopsy details, was darker and more complicated than the simple story offered in 1977. In the last year of his life, Elvis's routines had become erratic and troubling. At Graceland, he lived increasingly like a recluse, surrounded by loyal staff and hangers-on, but shielded from the wider world. He spent nights awake and restless, battling insomnia with a chemical cocktail of prescription pills. He would often stay up until dawn reading, playing racquetball, watching television, or sitting at the piano. By day, he tried to maintain the image of the king of rock and roll, still preparing for tours, still telling his fiancée, Ginger Alden, about plans for marriage and for a healthier future. But his body was already betraying him. Witnesses described his appearance as bloated and fatigued. His once sharp features had softened, his skin lost its youthful glow, and his energy swung between bursts of manic activity and moments of visible exhaustion. He was scheduled to leave Memphis that night to begin another tour, flying to Portland, Maine, for a show. But inside Graceland, his struggle with declining health was obvious to those who paid attention. That last day carried moments of eerie normalcy. Elvis played racquetball with friends, laughed, sweated, and afterward sat at a piano, singing a few lines. His voice, though weaker, still carried flashes of the brilliance that had captivated the world for decades. For a few hours, those around him could imagine that things were better, that Elvis might yet find his way out of the spiral. He spoke of the future, of marriage to Ginger, of wanting to live longer, of dreams not yet realized. But as the sun set over Memphis, his familiar demons returned. Insomnia gripped him again. He told Ginger he could not sleep, took a book, and retreated to the bathroom, a place he often sought for solitude during his long, sleepless nights. He told her not to fall asleep until he came back, a request she had heard before, though this time the words carried a weight that neither of them could have understood. Hours passed. The house fell silent, and Ginger drifted in and out of light sleep, unaware that only a few feet away the king of rock and roll was slipping away. By the following morning, the stillness felt ominous. At just after 9, Ginger went to check. Pushing open the bathroom door, she found Elvis sprawled on the floor, face pressed into the carpet, book still in hand. His body was pale and lifeless. She screamed for help, and chaos erupted through Graceland. Staff members ran to the scene, some in shock, others already fearing the worst. Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager and longtime friend, was among the first to see his fallen boss. CPR was attempted, paramedics were summoned, and a frantic effort was made to revive him. But the truth was clear. Elvis Presley was gone. He was rushed to Baptist Memorial Hospital, where doctors worked for hours to resuscitate him, but at 3:30 p.m., the announcement was made official. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had died at 42. The news spread instantly. Radio DJs interrupted songs to deliver the breaking story. Television anchors visibly struggled to keep composure as they announced the death of one of the century's greatest cultural icons. Outside Graceland, mourners gathered by the thousands, clutching records, photographs, and flowers, weeping openly in disbelief. To millions around the world, The idea of Elvis dying was unimaginable. He had been a constant, an almost mythical presence. Yet while fans grieved, inside Baptist Memorial Hospital, a different drama was unfolding, one that would stretch for decades. The cause of Elvis's death, at first attributed to a heart attack, quickly became the subject of dispute. The autopsy began under the direction of Dr. Jerry Francisco, the Shelby County coroner. Almost immediately, questions arose. Within hours of the procedure, Francisco declared to the press that Elvis had died of cardiac arrhythmia, a heart rhythm disturbance. The speed of his statement raised doubts. Toxicology reports had not been completed, microscopic tissue studies were pending, and yet Francisco spoke with certainty. Inside the morgue, the findings painted a far grimmer picture than the official statement suggested. Elvis's heart was grossly enlarged, nearly twice the size of a healthy man's, straining against arteries narrowed by years of cardiovascular disease. His liver was swollen and scarred, showing signs of fatty liver disease and possible cirrhosis. Most shocking of all was his colon, which was impacted and stretched to nearly twice its normal size. A grotesque result of chronic constipation caused by years of prescription drug use and poor diet. His abdomen had been distended, his skin discolored, his body showing evidence of long-term decline. Still, the official narrative remained that Elvis had simply died of a heart problem. Behind closed doors, however, doctors and staff whispered about the role of drugs. Toxicology samples had been drawn, and when the results came back, they revealed a disturbing truth. Elvis's body was saturated with prescription medications. High levels of codeine well above the therapeutic range were detected, along with significant amounts of Demerol, Quaaludes, Placidil, and Valium. This was not just incidental medication. This was a lethal cocktail capable of slowing his breathing, depressing his nervous system, and straining his weakened heart until it failed. To many pathologists, it was obvious that the drugs had played a central role in his death. Yet Dr. Francisco insisted publicly that drugs were not a factor, repeating his earlier claim that the heart alone had given out. The contradictions sparked outrage and suspicion. Why would a coroner ignore the toxicology findings? Why downplay the role of drugs when the evidence was so overwhelming? For many, the answer lay in the preservation of Elvis's legacy. In 1977, Presley was more than just a man. He was a multi-million-dollar industry. Records, movies, and merchandise tied to his image continued to generate enormous revenue, and the Presley estate depended on protecting his reputation. To acknowledge publicly that Elvis had effectively overdosed on prescription drugs would have been to stain the myth, reduce the magic, and risk the financial empire built around his name. It was in this climate that Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, made a controversial decision. Devastated by the loss of his only son, he requested that large portions of the autopsy files be sealed for 50 years, until 2027. The move was unprecedented and immediately fueled suspicion. Officially, it was to protect the family's privacy. Unofficially, it signaled that the contents were damaging. Over time, leaks suggested that the sealed files contained damning evidence: drug levels at staggering concentrations, organs ravaged by abuse, and a colon so compromised it was near rupture. These whispers circulated for years, fueling conspiracy theories, books, and documentaries. Meanwhile, the Presley estate carefully curated Elvis's image, presenting him eternally youthful and commanding, while downplaying the reality of his decline. Medical experts who studied the case eventually spoke out. Dr. Cyril Vecht, a respected forensic pathologist, reviewed the available evidence and declared that Elvis had died of drug-induced respiratory failure, which in turn led to cardiac arrest. He criticized local officials for protecting Presley's reputation instead of the truth. Attention also turned to Dr. George Nicopolis, nicknamed Dr. Nick, Elvis's longtime physician. Records revealed that in just 9 months, Elvis had been prescribed more than 10,000 doses of barbiturates, narcotics, and amphetamines. Dr. Nick defended himself, claiming he was trying to manage Elvis's many ailments, but critics accused him of enabling the deadly addiction. To insiders, Elvis's reliance on pills was an open secret. Everyone knew, but no one stopped it. As the years passed, consensus among medical experts became clear. Elvis's death was not simply the result of a failing heart, but of a body collapsing under years of chemical abuse, unchecked prescriptions, and neglect. His heart was enlarged, his liver scarred, his colon devastated, his bloodstream filled with lethal levels of drugs. His body looked decades older than his 42 years. He had been deteriorating in plain sight, yet kept performing, kept working, pushed forward by those around him who profited from his fame.